Hi. In my first video, and trust me, it really was my first video, I gave an outline of what this channel is going to be about. And the main topic is a world without work. In this video, I'm going to expand on the topic of a world without work and find out whether that world without work is going to be wonderful or not. Because for some it could be heaven, I think it's heaven, and for some it could be for hell. I didn't always think this way, trust me. Before I retired, I thought I would never retire. I couldn't imagine a world without work, and I dreaded it. I thought it was my idea of hell. I could sit still for about 10 minutes before I had to be up and doing something. And I never imagined it would be possible to enjoy a world without work. I got my identity from my work, and I thought without it I would be identityless. Now, things are different. I've changed. I'm a new man. I'm very happy in my world without work. I'm serene and confident, and life is overflowing. And I want to share my journey with you, and this video is going to outline how we intend to go forward. So, what do I mean by work, anyway? Well, work, in my definition, is something that you do simply for money. Something that you don't particularly like doing just for the money, just to keep body and soul together. Something you never dreamed of doing. As a child, you didn't think, I know, I'll work in a call centre. You probably had a much more exciting future mapped out for you when you were younger. And you've ended up, just as a matter of convenience, a matter of expediency, doing something that pays the bill. Work is something, in my definition, that doesn't light you up. It's not your vocation. It's not your reason for being. It's not something that excites you. It's not something that you go home and say, oh, guess what I do? It's wonderful. I had a great time at work today. It's kind of the opposite. It's kind of something that you tolerate. There may be all sorts of benefits to you out of work apart from the salary. Maybe you're one of these go-getters that delights in achieving, a high achiever, one that gets status and power and superiority over others through their achievements. Maybe your job title is what turns you on about the job, because it makes you feel important, significant. Maybe you have people under you. Maybe you're able to proudly look other people in the eye and say, oh yes, there are 200 people in my department. And by implication, 200 people serving you makes you sound and feel important. I'm not belittling any of these things. And if that's you, don't be cross at me for pointing it out. But it's important to realize that these may be the benefits you're getting from the thing that you call work. But the acid test of if it's work or not, as far as I'm concerned, is would you do it if you didn't get paid? If they said, very sorry, we've a bit of a problem, we're not being able to pay you for the next year, but I know how much you like working here. Just continue to come in and do what you do. I'm sure you'll find a way through. Would you be going, well, absolutely, my clients need me. This is my mission in life. This is what I've got to do. I will find a way to do it. Or will you go, piss away off? If I didn't get paid, I wouldn't be here. I'm off. On the other hand, if what you do isn't work, in contrast to what I described as work, you can call it variously a vocation or a paid hobby, if you like. In fact, I consider half of my, air quotes, working life a paid hobby, in that I thoroughly enjoyed what I was doing. It was where I wanted to be. Now, to be honest, at that time of my life, I couldn't have carried on doing those jobs if it wasn't for the pay. I would have had to have found some way to put, food on the table and a roof over my head. But I didn't really consider them as work. I enjoyed it. I turned up every day for at least the first half of each of the various phases of my career because I enjoyed it. It's where I wanted to be. And that's the point. Is what you're doing now with your life where you want to be? You probably spend, half to 2/3 of your waking life doing that thing that we call work. And if it is work, if it's simply assuaging how should we call it, psychological inadequacies in yourself that you need to be flattered and artificially bumped up by status. And I'm not knocking that, and you may not have thought of it as that. That's one thing. But if you're doing what I'm going to call from now on God's mission for you on earth, where you're using your God-given gifts to live a life of joy, doing what your Maker intended you to do, which you would do whether you were paid or not. You would do whether you had to crawl on broken glass to get there to do it, because it's your mission. It's really part of who you as a being on this planet at this time are. And that's your identity. And that's what I'm talking about rather than work. Not the thing that you turn up for, clock in, keep looking at the clock and thinking, God, only another hour to push and then I can get home and I can get my wages and go out at the weekend and do what I enjoy. The thing where you're thinking, you're never looking at the clock. The thing where you're thinking, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. The thing that you delight in telling others about. You'll stop people and say, do you know what I do? It's great. And you never tire of thinking about it. At one time in my life, I was in love with computers. It's when PCs first came out. I'd been a computer engineer of the old sort. If you're young enough, you'll never heard really of sort of Unix and Hewlett-Packard and all of the other big names that used to dominate, even fairly small businesses that had technology. And when PCs came out, they were thought of as Mickey Mouse toys, sort of gaming machines, only for enthusiasts they would never really take on in business, never make a big impact. And I fell in love with them. I can't tell you why. But the point about it is, I became my company's expert in PCs because I just so thoroughly enjoyed PCs. I became somewhat of a bore in that I read PC magazines. I watched videos about PCs. I subscribed to channels about PCs. I started building them and selling them. I would do anything I could with PCs, to the point where either my wife would say, you've got to pack this in and go to bed, you've got work tomorrow, because I had work, or I would feel, I've got to stop. I've got to get some sleep, but just one more thing. And I really had to fight one more thingism in this passion of mine, which was PCs. So that's the level of not workness that I'm attempting to talk about in this video. So what is retirement then? So retirement is not working at a job that you don't like simply for money. It's retiring from the world of work, that thing that you wouldn't do if you weren't paid. That leaves the possibility that you can do paid activity as long as it's not work and still define it as retirement. Now, this is quite interesting when you think about it. When we think of retirement, we think of reaching a particular age where you can stop working, quit the man, and then sit on your veranda in a deck chair, sipping lemonade or whatever it is you want to do, and bouncing the grandchildren on your knee, and that's retirement. And there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy all of those things. But if you define it as not working, where working is simply doing things that you don't particularly like or admire just for the money, when you end up in a position where you are not working, and that could be through a multitude of reasons, and you think about that, it could be job loss, it could be sort of like through redundancy, health, being sacked, downsizing, all of the reasons why you falling out with your boss and resigning in a huff. There might be all sorts of reasons why you end up not working. So at that point, you could call yourself unemployed. But unemployed is similar to retirement in everything except mental attitude. The retired person knows that they no longer work. The unemployed person still has the identity of a worker who's not working. And it's one of the reasons that they feel really, really unhappy, because their actions do not support their identity, that of a worker. However, at that point, you could, for any reason, decide enough is enough. I'm not going to work for another arsehole. I am going to finally follow my dream, follow my passion. I'm going to use this opportunity to let my God-given gifts and skills and talents and wants and likes and desires take me in a direction which eventually will give me money. You can call it a passion business, you can call it a vacation, whatever. You could do that. You could use job loss as the springboard into finally doing what God put you on this earth to do. And that's a good thing. Or you could retire deliberately. That's another good thing. You could be forced out by health, of course, which is actually what happened to me. I didn't make the active decision to retire. Health and mental health at that forced me into retirement, against kicking and screaming against my better judgment and everything I stood for. And it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. If I didn't have those health issues, I wouldn't have retired, and I wouldn't be making this video now. And of course, I already touched on briefly before death. You ain't going to be a call center operator after death, and you don't know what's coming. So maybe you should make peace with your life now, in anticipation of what's coming, the unknown. Surely you could die and there isn't anything after it. So what have you lost if you make peace with yourself now? But if you die and suddenly you find out there is an afterlife and that you are now a disembodied spirit that isn't going to be a call center operator, what are you going to do with yourself? As I say, finding peace in your life now has advantages now and may well have advantages in the hereafter too. Think about it. So who's going to retire? Well, in my opinion, we're all going to retire one way or the other. We're either going to lose our job through one of the reasons outlined above and simply not be able to get another job. We're going to reach retirement age, and although the government may be saying that we retire earlier, my experience here, I'm living in southern Spain at the moment, and people over 50 find it very, very difficult to get another job. If you end up out of a job at 50, you ain't going to get another one. So it doesn't really matter what the government says about retirement. It just means that they end up on the work scrap heap. And unless they've got family and friends to look after them, their life is over. So that's another form of retirement. And as I say, death, all sorts of reasons are going to cause us all to retire. But there's another aspect of this. I talked earlier about utopia. I'm talking about a technological utopia where some wonderful combination of AI, robotics, 3D printers, and cheap, abundant, plentiful, clean power makes work, which I defined already as doing things that you don't want, simply for money and irrelevancy. Everybody will then have pretty much unlimited leisure time. And that's something people are singularly unprepared to cope with. But there's another thing. Between now and this technological utopia that I have in my mind, and you may think is fanciful notion, there would undoubtedly be a period of civil turmoil, of civil unrest. Imagine it. The power of governments, large corporations, international financiers, manufacturing, even organized religions, all comes basically from scarcity. If we're talking about the end of scarcity, the raison d'etre for all the aforementioned organizations and plenty of others goes away, and I'm going to guess that they're going to resist giving it up. I doubt if the international financiers or the government's going to say, oh, wonderful, nobody needs us anymore, let's all go home and bounce the grandchildren on the knee. I kind of don't think it's going to happen that way. I do think that once the genie is out of the bottle, it becomes inevitable, but there will be a period of retrenchment where the establishment try and fight for things, try and fight for the status quo the way things always were, a fight they're destined to lose ultimately, but I bet there'll be some tears before bedtime before it gets there. And even if you think all of this is fanciful, that idiot there talking about this stupid technological utopia, who does he think he is? We kind of live in tumultuous times anyway. There's all sorts of things going on in the world, and it's not really my place to rename them now. You think of all the things you're unhappy about in the world, and you can see that there's kind of unrest everywhere if you look for it. So, dealing with this unrest and dealing with the world without work basically have a set of complementary and overlapping skills, which come under the heading of spirituality. Eerie words for many, many people. I'm kind of going to guess that if you were already in the spiritual, personal development, new age frame of mind, you probably wouldn't be watching this video. If you are, great. I hope we can still communicate with each other and both mutually learn. If not, don't be too worried about it. As I've said, spirituality has kind of got a dirty name. I kind of think in all terms of organized religion, where I'm going to claim that you have to give up drinking, smoking, sex, and having any kind of fun whatsoever in order to live a long life of boredom and misery. Or that it's going to be some sort of Buddhist renouncing the world and sitting cold, naked, cross-legged in a cave, communing with God. They are, I suppose, spirituality for some people. Certainly not for me. I don't know whether I look like I'm naked and sitting cross-legged in a cave, nor do I look like I've renounced food, drink, or having fun. I certainly haven't. Spirituality needn't be a scary word. Philosophy needn't be a scary word. But I can guarantee you they are absolutely necessary for you to make sense in this world of turmoil, and even more in the potential world after work, where spirituality will be the difference between the world after work being heaven or hell. With spirituality, it is my claim that the world after work can be heaven, it can be paradise on earth. And without spirituality, it can be endless boredom, monotony, strife, leading to a slow decline into a shitty death at the end. And I'm not being overly dramatic. I know many people my age who have left work, and that's exactly what's happened to them. A slow decline into ignominy. It's not what I wanted for myself. It's not what I've got for myself. It's not what I want for you. So stay tuned. We'll talk more about spirituality. In fact, most of the other videos I make will be on that theme. This really isn't a technology channel. I'm not here to try to convince you that robots, AI, 3D printers, and cheap, clean, abundant energy are going to be the way of the future. They're just what I think. But redundancy, sacking, health issues, downsizing, retirement, health, all of these things you must admit are on the radar. So one way or the other, whether you believe my vision of a technological utopia, one way or the other, you are probably going to end up out of work at some time in your life. And therefore, watch on, my friend. See if you can learn from my experience. I freely give it to you because I feel I've got some successes to share. And I feel that my position wouldn't have been like this if I hadn't taken the path I did. The path I took was largely accidental. I want to share my experiences with you in the hope that it does you some good. See you in the next vid. Bye-bye.